lot of flatness out here. We're on our way to Yarrawonga, we'll call it.
Information in the
Anyway, it's still flat. Oh, there's old mate with his seeder going. But we're Google's taking me on some. Well, I've let it take me on the shortest route.
Of value.
But it's back roads.
Challenges that you
shut her up. Okay. And we're yeah, so it's green there, Indu, which I suppose fair enough. Flat. Flat, flat, flat. Nothing but flat. Going across that paddy. Be a kilometre longer. Suppose it works when it needs to. Here's the end of it here. That's a big one. Anyway, that's the end, and he's doing that whole paddock. I've been going past some big irrigators. I wonder where their water was coming from, but then I've just crossed the channel. So they're, yeah, you got channel water. Oh, it's a bloody dairy. Oh my god, look at that. He's got a dairy there, and that's his bloody silage. Can't really see it, but yeah, well, that's a dairy. There you go. Middle of nowhere, no growing grass. He feeds them everything out of something that he's taken off the ground at an earlier date. Well, they're not like our dairies. We'll have to reappraise what we think a dairy is out here. And you can see it there, there's some grazing cattle. I've seen a couple of grazers now, past a few dairies too. So it's starting to happen. So they're not just grain. And this fella's, he's done something different. He's set fire to something over there. I don't know. This is another channel. I was going to see if I can. Yeah, the water's up the road. We'll stop here. We'll just get out. That's what we'll do. We'll get out and look. Yeah, well, this is our channel country. Lots of channels everywhere. And then that'll be their meter. Telemetry powered bloody flow meter. I've just pulled off the road here. I saw a bloody big shed, but that's a dairy. I bet we're coming back here. He's got a lot of bloody silage. Big mix wagon. That's just one big shed. Underpass there. Yeah, that is big. Yeah, they're all in there on the rotary. I can just see them sitting in there now. Plenty of feed going on. He's got some serious silage. It's all just lying on the ground, covered in plastic. And a heap of tyres on it. Tractors everywhere, only mixed wagons and stuff going on. That's his silage there. Just piles of it. There's bunkers over the back, there's a heap over the back there. He's just flat ground. Rightio, this is Echuca. Have a real fast 5-minute, not even. Quick look, just had breakfast and I'll race to the back of my room and then go off to our conference, but yeah, Echuca. It's the wharf, it's all the way up and down here. We're just getting on our bus, getting ready to leave. So the first farm we're going to is the Quilor Farms. I'll post in a still here of their information. You can pause it to see what they're up to. Yeah, that is a big canal. This farm we're going to has got 2,000 megalitres of water. Uses it. I think this definitely is farm, but there's a channel. And that's bunkers of feed. Yeah, it is. Oh, we're here. Boat for the effluent pond.
That's what we need, one of them.
Thanks, Kat. So we are now going to move off into our session. So please follow your bus leader and move to each section around the farm.
His 60 cow rotary or Westphalia. No surprises there. So it's the dairy whole yard, feed bins for dairy feed, and there's 60 cow rotary. Or Westphalia. The drafting gate. Back out the shed. And there's 2 herds in the shed, left and right, I assume.
If you do have any questions throughout, feel free to just raise your hand and Caleb will address them as he's going.
So yeah, once, as Beck said, yeah, Caleb Quinn. So what we've got here is a dairy we built in 2015, 60 unit rotary. We used to have a 50 unit down there, which we just turned the yard around to this one. So yeah, 60 unit rotary, GA gear, milk metering, cut removers, T1 on the other side that sprays iodine, so it's a one-man shed, just one man put cups on. And yeah, so pretty basic really setup. And as we've gone to the housing system the last few years, we've changed a few minor changes to the dairy. So what we've done, we've split the herds to make 2 milking herds about 3:30, to less time in the yard, just to help, less time in the yard and more time out there eating and stuff. And also in the dairy, we've changed a few things, like we've gone from these lighter, quick flow milking cups, just to help with the milk more cows and more time. There's really not much else to it. When we built it, we just wanted a one-man shed, sort of save on labour, because we struggle with labour out here, so that's why we pushed the cut one man with the T1 spraying iodine on the other side. yeah, as yeah, I'll find it pretty functional shed. So twice a day. So we start milking at so we get a milk there, get it at 4:30, gets cows in, cups on at 5, and then we have a mixer wagon driver who. Hello. Yep. Hello. Yeah, and then we have a mixer wagon driver that does the mixers as well as barn work and getting the second herd in. So yeah, the milk starts at 5 and then works through till I think it's about 8 o'clock. We normally finish washing up and everything, sometimes 8:30, and then in the afternoon we start at 2:30, cups on at 3 and finish about 5:36. So milking twice a day.
Did you notice when you went from split the herds into 2 or 3 30 that it increased yield much?
Yes, massive. We did notice milk production also just with general crowding situations where before we had a lot of probably more down cows on concrete because of overcrowding, a lot more pushing, a lot more time on concrete. So we definitely noticed a decrease in cows slipping over and that side. And definitely, just cows in and out. You split your herd, so we got fresh and stale in a way, and just milking speed, able to speed it up slow it down for fresh herd, speed it up for stale herd, which we've seen probably an hour maybe. Plus with the cups, faster cups, we'll probably see nearly an hour less milking time than we have previously. So long as you can transition the herds very good, so there's not much wait stall time between the two herds. So at the minute we've got a chain backing gate, electricity run through it. I want to remove that and put in a steel backing gate that can lift up overhead, so we can bring cows in quicker. Also, we'll bring cows in and there's already cows here, and then lift up over the top. We've got the mixer wagon will time to do better work and everything like that.
Are you still feeding the bale?
Yep, so we're still grain and canola in the bale. We cut it back a little bit. We still just have it there just to help them walk on and just higher production. So if they're doing more litres, they get a little bit more. So that's probably more, get a little bit more between each cow.
Any plan to go to 3X?
Would like to, but once again, staff is a shortage out here, and just so would like to maybe do that down the track, but just at this stage we struggle to get staff as it is. So staff is a real big issue.
Caleb, how many cows are doing on average per hour? Is it what, 270, 300?
Yeah, so we do about 300, sometimes a little more. 300 an hour we do average, which is about 300 an hour we work off. So we try not to do. It's a little bit over an hour a herd. There's about 330 in each herd, so we don't really want the cows standing on here any longer than an hour roughly. So we wouldn't go any bigger, the herds. My picture is to build another barn and then have a third herd on one side of the barn, so we can destock these herds a bit to 300 and 300 in each group, and then also divide them up better with like heifers or fresh or whatever, and then other side, just to help with production and stuff. And then the other side of that barn will be just dry cows, young stock, and calving cows. So eventually 300 I find is a very good number per herd for this system.
How many people milk, Caleb?
Just the one person. So in all the milking is 2 people, one for milking and one does the mixer wagon and shed work.
So automatic teat spray?
Yep.
How does that work?
Teat one, so it's a teat one is just an arm that runs off sensors and just has an air ram that shoots in, spraying iron up on the teats as it goes around. So just an iron which works works pretty well. We've got the first model, which is an older model, so you just got to keep an eye on the sensors. The sensors do knock and change, but majority of the time it works, probably 95% of the time. The other things we're looking at doing is putting fans in this shed, so positive flow through the shed, which sucks from that and blows out this end, but it does get hot in here, and it really does build the cows' cool temperature up. It doesn't really I want them to come in and really cool down, which it doesn't at the minute in the summer. And also rubber mutton we've just put down, just little things like that. And then up the other end, we're going to probably try and convert that into crush yards and everything. Because we used to put 700 cows in this yard. It was a nightmare, but that's why it's so long and big. But we only use half of it now. So yeah.
Do you have an effluent pond for the yard wash?
Yep. So all the water, the platform takes fresh water, and all that water goes to a sump. Then that sump pumps it into these 3 or 4 flood wash tanks. That flushes the whole backyard, and then that all gravities down into the sump down there, and then eventually at the 2 settling ponds to a liquid pond, and then there's a pump on that that does the flood wash for the barn. So it's all pretty recycled, and then we can pump that out in the paddocks and top up the liquid pond if we have to.
What sort of things do you do with the information from the milkmaids?
So we check for milk flow, just low milk. So I had a cow this morning to come and alert on the computer, low milk twice, and the last 2 milkings it's only given bugger all milk. And it come up an alert, and actually that cow went down this morning, so it was a bit slow, but yeah, it alert. This helps with picking cows, selling cows. I'm really focusing on fast milking cows now, so any slow milking ones I'm trying to cull out. So it calculates the flow per cow, so if a cow's got a low flow rate, she'll go pretty much. Just help with health management. And also it's got conductivity through milk metering, which is a salt test through milk, which works not too bad. It's just another good indication for milkers or workers to strip cows. We don't do we do herd testing, but we don't do the milk measurement one. We just do star on slave, like it's a drip feed off, and all we do is components and cell count. So we still do that every 6 weeks. And yeah, we just rely on our milk metering, which works pretty well. It's probably 0.8 of a litre out, so it looks like they're doing more on the computer than what they are doing. But that's just consistent through their milk metering.
Does it lock the cups out?
Yeah, so you can't, because these are quick starts, so you literally grab the cups, take the weight off the string, and the vacuum starts, or you press the green button. But with the code, you've got to push another button, which is one of the smaller white buttons, to indicate you've acknowledged the code, and then you're right to start milking. Another thing with these lighter cups, I've noticed since I put them in, since they are lighter, they don't sit as well. So if you're ever going to go down this track with a lighter cups, I'll totally recommend cluster support, which is something I want to get into with this machine, this platform, just to really make sure it's sitting right, because they do milk uneven if they're not sitting right.
Since he was, young, he was always going to shows and doing different things. So he took over the dairy side of it. Gregory's now does the cropping. In the last couple of years, we've purchased another 1,500 odd acres of ground. So it gives us, the opportunity to grow nearly all of our feed, grain, silage, hay, and whatever. We're not quite there yet, but because there's still a lot of developing and learning and upgrading our machinery to get it to that. But that's our ultimate aim here, is to milk 700 cows and in the right season. I mean, a bad season you won't do it, but in the right season, fully feed our whole herd. So that's the ambition. Now, for about 20-25 years, we had a feed pad. We had 2 feed pads out. I don't know if you saw it when you came in. Just a gravel pad was troughs. You know, pretty dirty, shitty, flat. You turn me off.
Just turn down a little bit. Sorry, Karen. The boss has just said. You're drowning in
And we had two. We had one in the night, a daytime feed pad, and a nighttime feed pad. But as we accumulated more land, we grew a lot more silage, and so we had to be able to store it and feed it out. So the feed pads worked. So they worked right up until 2016. I'm not sure where most of you are from, but 2016 was our wettest period of, not so much our highest rainfall year, but our wettest time. The length of time it was wet. It got wet in about March, and it was still wet. I'll tell you, it was still wet by the end of October. Those pads were disastrous. It was the worst year we've had. It was very difficult. So 2017, we built this concrete pad, this concrete feed pad, which is your alleyway and your sides. And we were thinking that we still grazed. We still grew some pasture and we still grazed. But it took less than a year to work it out that without a shed over that concrete feed pad, we couldn't fully utilise it. It was too hot in the summer, dusty, and the compost didn't work well enough in the winter. It got rain affected, and it just simply didn't work. So the following year, 2017, we put the sides up. We did it in stages. I don't know why, were we short of money? I don't know. Anyway, if you did it all again, you'd build it at once. If you ask the shed builders, building a shed over the cows while they were in there eating was a pretty tough job, but they did it. Tony Milne and his crew, I don't know if you've heard of him, but they did a magnificent job. So we put the shed up, and that's it. That's finalised the barn, and it works really, really well. It's got its challenges. You've got to work on the compost really carefully, really hard. You've got to scarify it and rotary hoe it and keep it working. It's a challenge, but it works. It does work, and there's plenty of them around. It's not unique to here, but you've got to really work on it. So we don't graze. These cows haven't left the shed. None of these cows, once they calve, have ever left the shed. So all that side of it works.
What sort of square metre per cow in the compost side?
I think it's 8.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Once again, I wasn't I didn't oversee. I was heavily involved, but Caleb and Gregory worked a lot with their advisors and consultants and all. I just sort of ticked off the money side, which is it got difficult at times. They're just $500,000 here and $500,000 there, which has been part of the challenge as we've gone along. But it's all worked out. But I think about 8 metres. Does that sound right? 8 metres per cow per square metre?
Looks probably about it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 178 metres long and 56 wide, which I think 16 metres of loafing, 4 where they stand, about 4 in the middle and 4 on the other side. So I think that's pretty standard. The dimensions of the barn like this is all pretty standard. So. What's helped us generate where we've got now is being out here. We've had people say, why would you build a dairy out there? I'm not sure if you came from Kearn or Leachville. We've had people get halfway down that gravel road and turn around and go back because there's nothing here. But the availability of buying land, we're not landlocked here, and the potential to still buy more land is here. So we've been able to accumulate, like I said, up to 5. We've got 5,000 acres. We've got about 1,500 megs of water, and being out here has given us that opportunity to grow the business and do what we're doing. So, and it's been, we've had milk companies. We aren't now because of the demand on milk. But we've nearly always been on the bottom of a milk company's list to pick up because the transport out here, especially in wetter winters, although our roads are pretty good now, that's a challenge. So from being out in the middle of, people call it the end of the world, but I've often said, the world's round, so how close to the start are we? I'm not sure. But it's really worked well now. We're so fortunate that both our boys and our daughter as well. Caleb's a twin, and his sister Erica, twin sister Erica, she comes out a lot and does AI and calf rearing, but to have the opportunity for 2 sons to take on the job fully, and they're fully committed, and they work for young blokes. They do a lot of hours and do a lot of hard work. As we all aware, labour is an issue. So there's a lot of issues, but we're working towards an ultimate result of just having a really successful dairy. So.
How many times a day are you feeding and pushing up feed?
Yeah, well, they feed early in the morning. They start here at 4:30. The first load will go out at 4:30. Push up every hour or so during the daylight hours. They don't come out at night and do it. You could have a robot, but I'm not sure about robots. I'm not sure about them. But so every hour or so, and then every day it's all pushed out and cleaned. It's all swept clean. And then the sweepings goes into a pile, and that goes to the heifers and dry cows and whatever, so nothing's wasted. The compost is a challenge, like I said, but that's scarified every day, rotary hoed every other day, and you've got to really work that and watch it and keep it working. You try to keep it working, as in composting with heat there. It's hard to do. Caleb puts in a chemical, I'm not sure what it is, that keeps the bugs working. Yeah.
When you put the shed up in 2016, did you notice much of an increase in litres of milk?
Yes. The shed went up the concrete went in 2016, 2017, the shed went up in 18. I would say, plus components, litrage has probably gone up 2 or 3 litres, maybe 4 litres a cow, but definitely components. We average around 4.5, 4.6 butterfat and about 3.5, 3.6 protein. Well, that's about, on both of those, it's about 3 or 4 points better than it was with grazing and in the old system. So, I mean, we get paid in solids, so that's, and it's because basically every day you're making a cake, every day you can look at it and say, we need a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that or whatever. Sorry?
We've just got 1 minute left, so if you want to take one
Questions?
more question.
Yeah,
just
any more
one
questions?
more question.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep.
what do you do about that compost now over the winter?
Out there, well, that'll just stay there all heaped up.
Do you put extra in, or what did you do?
We do. We've got a compost pile. You can't see
Yeah,
it there.
those-
There's a
yeah,
huge
those
compost
numbers
pile
there.
right at the back of the shed,
The,
and all through the winter,
so what
especially
the
on
shed
that south
78,
side.
16
It'll be carted
compost
in and worked in, and that
and
might
feed,
happen
Ali, the
twice a
feed
week,
was
depending on the weather and
5,
the
I think.
temperatures.
4,
Yeah.
5, yeah.
Preparation,
Yeah,
like we've learned over the 4 or 5 years, we haven't had
So
any
we said about
disasters yet, but you
8.6
could easily have a disaster with
compost
mastitis.
area, which is
And the
not
most
enough.
important
It's got to
thing
be
we learned,
10.
you've got to have a huge pile of compost in reserve ready to go. And so if it gets a bit damp and your bugs build, like your mastitis and bad bugs build up, then we just cart it in. We've got a manure spreader thing that just does it easy, and you've got to keep on top of that. It's well, in the depth of, in the middle of winter, June, July, probably once a week. Just depends how damp the compost
keep
gets.
topping it up. That's
when it needs
not
it.
composting.
Yeah. Now the shed is east-west. Now there's a lot of different ways. There's not a lot. There's 2 different ways of putting your shed up: east-west or north-south. This one's east-west because it complements the dairy. We walk straight in, but our south side gets very damp because that doesn't see any sun in the middle of winter. So that's a challenge. If you go north-south that way, then right through the summer your west side doesn't get any shade.
Yeah, so overall, as Pat said at the start, there's nearly 5,000 acres or 2,000 hectares. This year there's planned of 800 hectares of vetch, and 300 of that is straight vetch, and 500 is wheat and vetch. We've got about 600 hectares of barley. Most of that goes through the header later on. Some will go through the mower into hay. About 300 hectares of wheat. Similar story there. Some in the header, some through the mower. About 80 hectares of shaftbill and rye. A little bit of lucerne. It's been good to the Quins over the years, and Scott Rathbone and I think we probably should have some more in, and we might go that way in time. So basically the hectares which are on AgWorld, which we've been using for a few years now and makes life a bit easy with spray recos and crop planting, it's set up based around the nutritionist, which is Scott Rathbone, on tonnage of basically corn, vetch and cereals and pasture that Scott wants in the ration. So the other bit we haven't mentioned is the corn. So what we've just talked about, winter, in the summer the corn was 60 hectares just gone, with 80 hectares to come in this year. We've been averaging around 25 tonne a hectare for the last few years, so which is exceptional, especially on heavy, hard to manage soil, can be tricky when to irrigate or not to irrigate. The typical program that we've followed here, which is a little bit different to what I generally do over Tongala Way and Echuca, Kyabram and Shepparton, is we prep, sow dry water up. Most of the paddocks that way, we prep, irrigate and then sow in the moisture. The reason for that is the heavy dark soil here that once we do water it, or pre-water it and try and get on, it's a long time getting on, and by the time we can get on it seems to knife open and not work so well. But sowing shallow into dry ground, watering up, as long as we're not going too early while the ground's cold, we seem to get away with it pretty well. There's a fair bit of manure that goes on first, around 10-15 tonnes a hectare from the sheds. Around 700 kilos of urea is spread out on top, and that's cultivated in. Then after cultivation, we've basically got the corn planter here, sticking the seed in 30 mil deep. Pre-em sprays go over the dry ground, and then we go and flood it, water it up and monitor the emergence. And again, we've had a pretty good run, haven't we, the last few years? Very good. Pioneer varieties, mainly 1315 IT and the 1197, the new variety out of Pioneer that's shown a bit more grain per hectare this year than the 1315. It's really stood out a lot more. And it's around that 25 tonne per hectare, and probably 60% of that would be grain. So we're up around, I'd say, 15 tonne of grain a hectare coming off that variety. Pretty standard program with phosphorus through the corn planter as a granule, a little bit of liquid injection with a bit of biology out of Celtec at Tongala called triculture. Pre-em chemistry, pretty standard, prime extra gold, dual gold and insecticide. So that might lead on to David to talk a bit about the ensiling and some tricks of his trade.
Hang on, what sort of sowing rate are you doing with your corn?
Around about 90 to 95,000 seeds a hectare.
And so going on from growing these crops, delivering it to cows, so I've been working with Quins for a little bit on just that fodder conservation. So as their business has grown, as Greg said, they want to move to a new silage area. The old one's been outgrown, worn out, and is now, as the business has changed, probably in the wrong place. So some of that growing pains just at times creates inconsistencies in the forages that you're producing and delivering to cows. And in these systems, forage is 50% of the diet. So it really needs consistency in those forages to feed them. So managing that at harvest more intensely, so to get the maturities right, timing, preparation for spring silages, so that mow rake situation, because we can have a 22% protein veg crop suddenly turn into 14% protein if we've made a couple of wrong decisions or no decision or a bad weather event. So
Stop there, sorry Dad. Can everyone move out this way?
Yeah, we're all going to get holes with dust. Tractor coming. Or wagon, something.
To get consistent feed into storage, conserved for short or long term, doesn't matter. If you do it right, we can keep it as long as you like. So on the vetches, the preparation is really important to those to maintain that protein value of those crops going into the silage. With the cereals, similar timing, moisture management. The cereals get made at too long a chop length, it not only impacts on the silage process, it also can have an impact on the feeding process. So we've got a lot of long material in there. We can have sorting, we can have reduced dry matter intake, so it just doesn't make our ration mix nicely and work in the feed trough. So we've seen examples of getting that wrong can be another kilo and a half of dry matter I'm not feeding because I just can't get the ration the consistency I want. So then, if similar with the corn silage, timing is everything. We're growing starch, we're growing grain, so we want to manage that crop to grow a magnificent grain crop and harvest that grain as silage. But we also want to process that whole plant, and we want to process that grain so that it's ready to feed and easily digestible for those animals. So what I mean by that is processing in the forage harvester. We need to check these things, the moistures, the processing, all the chop length, all these things at harvest, so we're not looking at the stack in 6 months' time or the feed, and we're going, why isn't this working? I should have done this, or I should have done that. We need to have systems to do this on the day at harvest when we're making this feed. If you look at unprocessed corn silages, when they're on the bad side, you've got half a dozen whole grains per litre of silage. That's just like grabbing a bucket full of whole grain and tipping it in the shit pile and not feeding it to the cows, because that's essentially where it's going. If the roller mill at the dairy was giving out a result of a whole bucket full per tonne of feed, you'd change it, you'd fix it, you'd run the phone to someone. So we shouldn't let it happen in our silages either. We don't process it, because if we don't process these crops right, we can't get the full benefit of the feed, and the cows can't benefit from it. That's my little piece in the puzzle.
We've got
from the cereal silage point of view, what specs are you looking for from the crops to install, like energy, protein?
Well, it depends what our goal is by our nutritionist, or what our feed budget says if we want protein or energy. If we're trying to harvest it early for a high protein, high digestibility, or later as a whole grain starch supply. So 2 opportunities with cereal silages.
We've just got 1 minute left here, so if there's any final questions for any 3 of these guys. Yep.
Do you recall what's the starch on that new Pioneer hybrid?
I haven't done a...
Was it on old mate's 80s?
Yeah, which I reckon it was around 36 on that, 35, 36, but we haven't done a... That was straight off the chopper. I haven't seen a test out of the pit. I'm not sure whether my brother's done that yet or not, but he looks after that.
On the timing of it, it should be in the high 30s.
It should be. The new variety should be high based on the grain content.
And there's definitely
on that alone, I would have thought it.
Based on if you harvested at the right time.
Yeah.
If you harvested a week early, maybe.
Nah.
Which I think that all finished. It was about 3.5, 4 milk line.
Yeah.
We're pretty right on dry matter.
Yeah.
But the same variety, I've seen other properties where we've been getting starches in the 40s.
Why do you favour vetch over lucerne as your protein? Is that a choice on the farm, or is it more suitable to grow here?
Vetch I reckon is easier to grow here. Well, mainly because with the flood irrigation, it's a lot easier to, we focus on the corn, do a lot of corn, and we're doing less vetch. So therefore it was easier to put, we're doing less lucerne, and that it was easier to put more vetch in the winter.
One's a perennial, one's your annual, so the annual's a bit more flexible to give you the rotation of vetch and then corn and wherever else it goes on the irrigation.
But I reckon if you can get your lucerne right, lucerne is a higher protein and better feed that I've seen. But if you get a summer rain and that, it soon finishes it pretty shit too. So, but the same with your vetch, I suppose. But vetch seems to go pretty well in the pit, I find, with the cereal in it as well. We don't feed much hay in the mixer if we can get the cereal content right, mixed in with the vetch. So.
What's your water use per hectare?
On
all
corn
and all up? Or?
Well, I reckon corn would be around that 7 or 8, and then the winter crops. Our vetch is probably only 1 water in the year, so a couple megs to the hectare, I suppose. Cereals, we only sort of water that unless we have to. Which the last couple of years water's been cheap, so that's probably about the same. Depending which way we go. Grain we go a bit more, extra watering. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. If we can put our hands together for the boys.
I'm only guessing, but I think that's what he's cultivating his compost with.
Yeah, so my name's Scott Rathbone. I work with the Quins on anything and everything, and this is the latest construction at the Quin farm, which is obviously a calf shed. It's probably been 2 years in the making because no one could agree what site it was going to go to and what the design was. So eventually Michelle got away. Eventually we came to some level of agreement, and construction happened over the summer months. So from a design point of view, Michelle used to rear calves a couple of k's away in a little shed that, in my mind, really just guaranteed that every calf got the same disease and multiple diseases. So from that, we wanted something that was high roof, plenty of ventilation, and then really close to the rest of the farm because it was difficult to get anybody to feed the calves, and if they went over there they didn't do a very good job. So close as we could, and it locks in with facilities, so we didn't really have to double up on too much that was needed, like hot water, main water system. Effluent goes straight into the effluent pond. It was pretty easy. There's a flood wash tank at the top. It was pretty easy to plumb into all of that. So really what we did is built a shed, put a heap of steelwork in and laid some concrete. So this is what we've got, and it works pretty damn well. So part of the idea was everything can be done from the outside. Once the water that leaves that bucket and hangs on that fence, you know, that'll need some level of cleaning, but basically we're trying to feed the milk from the outside, top up the grain and hay from here, and do as little as possible from inside. And from a population point of view, we've designed it a bit over 4 square metres a calf, so there's 10 calves per pen. Everyone wants to put more calves in. What happens when you put more calves in is they can't do their stuff along the front. They're herd animals and they like to all be up here or not, and the bedding gets a bit dirtier and shittier quick. So don't break the rules when you build a calf shed. Design it right and use it appropriately. Michelle, do you want to talk about how you run it?
Yeah, so I just feed the calves up here on the milk, the teats, and they come up here, they'll eat, they'll go back at the back of the shed after they're done eating and lay down in the sun immediately, which I just find amazing. And then in the afternoon, yeah, they'll sort of spread out up here rather than be in the sun. We originally were going to design dirt in that area, and because I had a shit spring and lost a lot of calves, I said, nah, I'm going concrete. I'll raise. So I'm raising everything again this year to pay for this. But we've got all concrete. So those pens there we had cleaned out. They've had 2 lots of calves in them. The first lot we put straw in, and then in between calves I put the Stellison down and then put more straw on top. And you can see there's a pile out the back we just cleaned out the other day. It's hardly wet, like it's just damp. So it held up really well. I'm very happy with it. So we pressure washed and disinfected. So this alleyway here gets washed down once a day. We got a tank at the end, we flood wash. It'd be better once we get rid of those drums, because that does harbor a bit of stuff. Yeah, so I only feed once a day, even from the start. That's what I've always done. I know it goes against a lot of people's views, but yeah, I don't have a problem with it. And these guys here, about 8 weeks old, I think we'll probably wean these in here. I've got calves out in the paddock now. I would prefer them out in the paddock. I just probably like the looks of them. I don't know. But we'll see how we go. That's me and Caleb are a bit loggerheads on that. He wants to raise them here. But we're calving just a few head now. We start calving the heifers end of June, and then we'll be calving straight through again. So I don't know, because I want time to clean these out and wash them down and stuff. So we'll see how we go.
And part of the journey is that these guys were strongly grazing, which you would have heard from Pat, and very, very seasonal. Michelle was an aggressive synchrony both seasons, and usually by 4 weeks into calving she was cursing about why she was so strongly seasonal. And what it sort of has taken is enough facility around the place to get us to a point where it's going to be easier to go year round. Like if you've got really poor calf rearing facilities and you calve year round, you just have a shit time all the time. Whereas now, 2 calves a day every day, or 4 over an extended period, is just so manageable. So it's a bit of a journey, Michelle, but you're getting there.
Yeah.
Leaving the PG in the fridge. And,
well, after we had 150 calf in 1 week, I had enough. I said that's it, because we were bringing in calves and I had 15 in each pen, and I was like, nah, this is, and that's the last time I've synchronized, because we always had a very good synchronization pattern, but yeah, it's too hard. But I am only calving year round till November, December, January. I am having those 3 months off. I don't care what anyone says, because yeah, that's it. I'm still not sold on, we calve at the end of January, but I'm still not sold on heat and calving on cows. They don't like it. And you know, we still
Put another shed up.
Oh, damn. Have you been with Caleb yet? He probably already said that. Yes, I already know his plans. But yeah, it's too hard to, yeah, in the heat. I don't like it.
When it comes to feeding the cows, you go with just the traditional kind of 4.5 liters, 5 liters?
Oh yeah, 4 liters a day. Yeah.
Do you ever consider going a bit higher?
Only because our at this stage, our second herd, because it's been a bit wet, so we've had a bit of mastitis, because I just use the treated milk. So we've had excess. I stick with the 4 only because we can do that and I don't have to go on the milk powder. If I have to go on the milk powder, I'd probably go less, actually. Yeah. But no, I don't see the advantage, because they eat a lot of grain and hay, and if you're feeding more milk, they're not going to have that other intake, and really you want to get that rumen going. Yeah, that's just my point of view. Yeah.
Did you see a change in disease when you moved to this facility?
Well, it's new, so I have no disease. The spring will be the test. Coccidiosis was always huge here. Always had to do Baycox religiously. Didn't have to do one. I do use Milo. I don't know if you heard of Milo in the milk. That's the only thing I add. That did cut down our coccidiosis over the years, but this definitely has cut it out. Even the ones I have in the paddock, I don't get it. So it's basically the start.
Do you
Yeah.
test colostrum?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I do usually make sure everything gets colostrum. Yeah. Yeah.
Never considered robotic feeders?
I have one. I haven't used it for 12, 15 years, but we are considering bringing it over and maybe testing 4 pens just on milk powder. I had a lot of disease with it. I didn't like that everybody used the same teat. I don't know if that was the problem
or the facility you had.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep.
So we do have it. We're going to resurrect it, but we just haven't done that yet. Yeah.
In your design of your pens, what's the reason for not making the walls higher up, solid?
So that was really, the walls are only there because we have workers, and we didn't want them wrecking gates and fences. So really, that's the only reason the concrete's there, is to protect it. And we didn't make them high for the fact we didn't want wet areas. We didn't want an area that didn't get airflow. And so far, even in these corners, it hasn't been that bad. Yeah.
With the design of the new shed, would you like to take a guess at how less number of hours per calf it will take to get them to 8 weeks and wean? Notwithstanding the fact that you could take out having to travel to the other facility and don't count the travel time. Do you think, because I think a lot of us are curious about the capital investment and what it actually means in terms of saved time per calf?
That's a tricky one, because I don't think I've saved time for calf, but I think I've got better calves. And I also can have anyone do this, and I have Lewis, one of our workers, he's an apprentice. He usually only helps Greg with the cropping side, and he had to come in here and help me feed calves. He even could feed it. You know, like the other facility, no way, no. Like, he did it easily. You know, so that way I think it pays off. I actually spend probably more time feeding grain and hay, where if I had them in the paddock, the tractor goes in and does that. But I think it's quality time, probably more, you know.
You'll have a better calf, but you'll have a better cow for its whole life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb's also seeing, and I don't know, because I see him out on the trailer, and I don't know. He thinks they're deeper in their belly as well.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting over time to see if we have created
a lift. Yeah.
I said it's genetics, and he said no, it isn't.
Yeah.
So
Do you genomically test?
no.
So I noticed, so you read everything, were you saying? So
Yes.
bulls,
Everything.
and then what's your end plan with them?
Oh, so sell them?
Yeah.
So basically I raised everything in the spring, and that's paid for half of this.
Yeah.
And now I just got to pay for the other half, which you're going to do. And then this is paid for. Just
So what weight do you generally get the steers to?
The ones in the spring we sold at about 120 kilos.
Yeah.
So you don't hold them for that long.
No, well, I got $750. Why would you?
Just the weaning bit of them.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen this autumn yet. Not sure, because I think the price has dropped a little bit. So might rear them bigger. I don't know.
Still better than it was a couple of years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I'm taking advantage of the situation, and if I get this paid for, see, because if I don't raise everything, it will raise most everything in here. Yeah. Yeah.
And part of the discussion early on, Michelle, was the conversation around, do you want to do some individual feeding, like with really baby calves? When they're pretty seasonal, it's not hard to have 10 or 15 a day, so you can't design a shed for that number that's cost effective, like you're saying, John. So, but when you get more to year round, and maybe you are bringing in 3 a day, then there might be some challenges around how that gets managed.
Yeah.
Because if it takes 3 days to fill a pen, it might be difficult to have them all in the same pen compared to filling a pen in 1 day. So we're going to cross that when we get there. There might be 1 pen up. Michelle always wanted a sick pen.
Yeah,
I don't know why you design a calf shed with a sick pen.
No, I still have
Practical.
it, Scott. So I still have it.
So
It's an extra pen.
there might be a pen up the top or the bottom that's a bit of a high maintenance pen that calf won't drink, or who knows.
No, I
Knock them on the
already
head.
have that, Scott, so don't worry.
With the ventilation, like both sides open, like are you concerned that there could be too much ventilation and the calves get cold? No.
The wind goes through here and it gets cold, but I tell you, it does not affect these calves. I don't know if it's, they got the walls and the straw, I don't know, and the sun, I think with the sun coming in, but I freeze out here. And I think I would never raise calves in it, but they're happy. So I think, because Scott always said, ventilation is the key, and I tend to agree with him now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
All right,
I
time
think
for one more
I think
question.
because there's rails, there's so much at this level, and if I was wind, I would go at this level. So that looks like what the wind does.
Now, if anyone needs to go to the toilet or anything, feel free. We'll collect your foodies as you get back on the bus, and there's drinks and fruit at the bus if you want to eat before you jump on.
You can see why you think land is cheap. There's shitloads of it.